Welcome everyone to the Subject Podcast, where we talk about, you guessed it, subjects. What a great idea for a podcast, said our totally real and not made up producer. We're just going to call him Bart, mainly because I really want to meet someone in 2021 who has the name Bart. We'd like to thank our proud sponsors who are also real and not made up, this empty pack of mints I haven't thrown away, and this 25-foot tape measure I bought a few weeks ago and haven't used once. Again, we thank you for tuning in, and let's just dive right into it. So this week's discussion, we're going to talk about air travel. In my opinion, it is one of my favorite methods of getting around. If I could, I would fly everywhere. I love everything about, flying on a plane. I would prefer flying over driving any day of the week. And I don't even know what it is, really. I'm not even the one who gets to fly the plane. I just get to sit on this big bus in the sky while someone else, I trust the guy to get me to where I need to be. But don't get me wrong, I would love to learn how to fly a plane. I think that would be one of the coolest things, if I could get a chance to do that. I think that would be really fun. But again, really, what is it about flying that I like? And if I really had to dumb the situation down, literally, you are on a big flying bus in the sky. That's all it is. So, I've been living in Chicago for 3.5 months now. I've been, this is my first semester here at Columbia. I've gone home twice now. Both times I flew. Talk about one of the easiest flights ever in the history of flights. The flight from O'Hare to MSP. It's about 55 minutes of actual flight time. You go up, the seatbelt sign comes off, the flight attendants come by, ask if you want a water, juice, whatever. The captain comes on. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're going to begin our descent, and we should have you on the ground in a few minutes. Again, we thank you for flying Delta, and safety and comfort is what keeps our roaring skies great. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you down on the ground. Amen. There's always something about safety in the sky during the captain's updates. So I've gone home now twice since I've started school here, and the first time I flew with Delta. The second time I think it was United. But my first flight going home, I wasn't aware that the drinks were free. So I got a small shooter of Jack Daniels and a Coke, which if you've never been buzzed on a plane, you should try it, if you're of age, of course. So I have my Jack and Coke on the plane. It's the most relaxed I've ever been. Which is odd, considering, because the first time I ever had alcohol on the plane, it was July of 2019. It was a month after I turned 21. My two buddies, Alex, Brandon, myself. Yes, one of my best friends' name is Alex. We took this guy's trip to LA. We went out to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We flew Delta. We weren't sitting next to each other on the plane, but before we boarded, we went over to the bar that's right across the gate, and we ordered 3 tall beers. And we pretty much just chugged them down right then and there. And then we got on the plane, and then we all kind of had this dizziness to our stomachs. Luckily, no one puked, but it was like 2 to 3 hours of that, and it wasn't the best time because we just didn't know okay, what's going to happen next. But anyway, I brought that up because the time I ordered the Jack and Coke, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not feeling it. So yay for tolerance, I guess. Then there's this trip to New York in 2018, which again, Brandon and we took. This time it was for the 10th anniversary of The Dark Knight, which I could talk about that experience within itself for days. We went to the Lincoln Square IMAX AMC. It was shown on IMAX 70 millimeter, essentially the film's native format. It was like watching it for the first time again, which essentially it was because. Back when it first came out, I had only watched it once in theaters, and that was back on regular 35 millimeter, like how every movie used to be shown. But and of course I've seen it about 150 times on Blu-ray, but never in its native IMAX format. So I was very happy with that. But anyway, I loved everything about New York. We were there for a total of about 3 days. We were staying in Union City, New Jersey. This part is where we're dumb. Not because we stayed in New Jersey, but because we had no idea where these things were and how much time would actually be spent getting to these places. So we flew out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. We landed in LaGuardia, which is in Queens. So words to live by. Don't be like us. If you're 20 years old and you and your buddy are visiting New York for the first time in August and you're staying in Union City, just fly into Newark Airport. You'll save yourself about 6 hours of walking around with your suitcase, the subways, the streets, Times Square. Okay, that's the other thing about New York that I meant to call bullshit on. In every movie we've ever seen about New York, the streets are relatively somewhat empty. Almost no people in sight. They are the most crowded things on the planet. And God forbid if a person can't post on their Snap stories in Times Square, that they're in the Big Apple, just keep walking. You're not going to die if you can't post something on your stupid Snap story. I promise, your Snap story is not critical to anyone's survival. Snapchat and social media could go away tomorrow with the click of a button and we would all be fine. We might even be better off than what we were. I don't know. I'm not a philosopher. I'm just trying to get somewhere. So I love traveling by planes. That's the moral of the story. The old bus with wings. Then there's the people who hate flying for various reasons. Most of it is because the people who hate flying, it's one of two reasons. Either they just don't like the environment or they think they're going to die. So people like my mother who, pessimistic attitude towards flying. She hates everything about it. The last plane I was on with her, we were going to Georgia to attend my cousin's wedding. Beautiful wedding, by the way. We had a great time. Aside from the political environment of Georgia, everything else about it, it was a very cool state. Atlanta was a cool city. The countryside of Georgia was very beautiful, but then the ocean. I think we stayed at DeSoto. We had this really good seafood place. I think it was called the Crab Shack. It was really good food. But okay, back to my mom's hatred and personal vendetta against the planes. Let's just put it this way. If my mom had her way, she would drive to Europe. She won't do it. Something about flying over the ocean just isn't clicking, which is real unfortunate. But we still think, my brothers, my dad, and I, we still think we can convince her. There was talks after my younger brother Adam graduates from high school, this coming spring, we would take a family trip to Europe because he was actually supposed to go to Germany last year for the exchange program, but COVID happened and he couldn't go. But okay, back to my cousin's wedding. I remember there was like an argument at the dinner table. She was like. This was, I think, a couple days before we were supposed to leave, and she was just saying, like, okay, let's just cancel the plane tickets and let's just drive. And, my dad was like, no, everything's paid for, we're not driving. And my mom, I think there was a plane crash or something, and... whenever you get to the airport with my mom, she just has this look on her face like, this is gonna be it. Yeah, and that's not helping anyone, Mom. But no, okay. So her reason behind not liking flying, like, she likes to be in control. So that I can see where she's coming from. Which is a little contradictory because if we were to have driven to Georgia, it would have been my dad driving the car. She would be in the front with her book. My older brother Andrew and I would take the middle of the Suburban, and Adam, he would have been in the back. So, and again, it doesn't matter how many statistics we bring up of how many more car accidents there are than airplane crashes. It doesn't matter. She just doesn't like flying. So anyway, we're on the plane to Hartsfield, the Atlanta airport, and it's about a 3.5 hour flight. And we get on the plane. It's a red eye flight time, so it looks like a newer plane, by the way. It definitely has like a more modern, newer look to it. Like there were TVs on all the back of the seats and everything, and. That was actually the lifesaver of this flight for my mom, because those things, you can check the flight pattern, you watch the movies, whatever, you turn it off, but my mom, she was watching the flight path. She was able to read where we were, what height we were traveling at, what the temperature was outside. So that really, I don't know why, but that calmed her down. I don't know what it was, but she really enjoyed it. But again, I don't know if like she just had a bad experience once, like if there was a more turbulence than usual, or she just really took the ending of Air Force One to heart. But I have never really gotten a solid answer other than she just doesn't like flying. But here, let me say this. I love my mom to death. You have to have sympathy for her because she had 3 boys. The closest thing she ever had to a daughter were the dogs. Our first dog, Bailey, and our current dog, Brandy. What's that? Oh, yes, the Irish family naming their dogs after liquor. How shocking. The next dog is either going to be named Belvedere, Brew, Blarney, or Bourbon, but we'll get there when we get there, I guess. We're hoping you enjoyed this week's glimpse into the Hewitt household. And now back to planes. On the topic of bad flight experiences, I have yet to experience one myself, like a real bad one that makes me not want to fly. Like I've definitely had a few bumpy flights, a few flights that took forever to leave the gate, but I can't really say anything that made me hate flying. I mean, there was this one time though, it was January of 2020, it was like a few days into the new year. I had to, quote unquote, run an errand for my dad. I know I've mentioned this in class, but he's a state representative back home in Minnesota, and he had a meeting in Thief River Falls. He was talking like the EMS guys, the firefighters, and it was not one of his committee meetings. But anyway, I had to drive his car up to Thief River Falls, leave it at this very small, regional airport, and it was. For those who don't know the layout of Minnesota, so I live in Rosemount. That's about 20 miles south of the Twin Cities. I live in the South Metro area, and Thief River Falls is about 6 hours north. It's like towards Fargo, North Dakota. So I leave my dad's Suburban in Thief River Falls at this very small airport. I go through the smallest TSA checkpoint I think I've ever gone through, and they were like, okay, so all right, you're good, man. How's it going? All right, we're good. All right, yeah, okay. And you just walk through that thing. Great. You can just go wait in the little waiting area, and then we'll have a guy walk you guys out on the tarmac and everything. So it was just like a little waiting room. You could look out the window. You could see, this was, early January, and there was very high winds that day, and it looked really cool. I have a picture. So you can see like the snow is just kind of blowing over the runway, and you got that small plane right there, and yeah, okay. So when I saw that plane, I was like, "Oh my God, I might die on this thing." This was the one time I was thinking I might die, because it's rarely like the commercial flights anymore. It's usually like the smaller planes that always have problems. So it was like, okay, I guess we're doing this. Everything was fine, obviously, up until when we landed. We were making our descent, and you could just feel how strong the winds were. It was pushing the plane, a little back and forth, and you could just tell the pilot was just fighting it, just to make the landing as straight as he could. But no, I mean, I'm still here. Everything's fine. Yeah, the weird thing about that flight, though, those 2 days, the whole running the errand up to Thief River Falls, flying back, that plane was actually, my dad was supposed to take that plane the next morning, and it had faulty wiring, so I think he either his meeting had to get postponed or just to later in the day. He did eventually, get up there and drive back, but my God, it was quite the experience as far as. I was on a plane that had faulty wiring, so, talk about luck. You talk to people all the time about, how they feel about, flying. And again, like it's either, they like it or they think they don't like the actual experience, but they don't mind it, but they think they're going to die. So I'm not one who I don't usually jump to that, because I think that will just make things worse. I think it's just important to be like, okay, all right. It's within their best interest to not let this plane crash. We just got to remember that. And if anything bad's going to happen, it usually happens on takeoff. But, once we get past there, the pilot comes on, like, hey, everyone, how we doing? And we are going to be traveling, about 50 minutes. We'll get you in about 5 minutes early. All right, thank you for choosing whoever. Yeah. That is my pilot voice. I hope everyone enjoys it. But anyway, what do you feel about flying? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comment section. Yeah, so I think that's going to cover our first week of the Subject podcast. Hopefully everyone enjoyed it. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. This was fun. All right, thank you.